The snow had started falling before sunrise, soft and slow, blanketing the street in quiet. It was one of those December mornings where even the air felt like it was holding its breath, as if the world knew something was about to change. Inside, the tree lights blinked in a lazy rhythm, casting tiny reflections in the window panes. Wrapping paper lay crumpled across the floor, and half-empty mugs of cocoa steamed gently on the coffee table. Laughter had just faded minutes before, replaced by that peaceful lull that follows the first wave of gift opening. And then, my daughter reached for the last box. It was small, too small to be the doll she'd been hinting at for months. It had no tag. Just deep red paper and a black ribbon, tied too tightly. She held it for a second longer than necessary, the way someone might hold a stone they found in a river, unsure if it's beautiful or dangerous. When she opened it, I saw her face change before I even saw what was inside. Her smile drained away like someone turned off the light inside her. Her hands froze mid-air. And then she looked up at me, not panicked, not crying, just pale. The kind of pale that comes when the soul steps back from the body for a second. She didn't say a word. We stared at each other. That moment, that look, I'll carry it with me long after my bones forget how to walk. I knelt beside her, touched her hand, and she let the box drop. Inside it was something small. Ordinary to anyone else, maybe. But not to her. Not to us. I won't say what it was. Not yet. But it was the kind of thing that carries weight, even though it barely weighs anything. The kind of thing that can pull you straight back into a memory you tried to bury beneath the holidays, beneath fake smiles and trimmed branches. The room felt colder after that. Like the fire had gone out without warning. She looked out the window, and I followed her gaze. There was a man standing across the street. Still. Watching. Not moving. A figure, barely visible in the snow. Then my phone buzzed. 5 minutes later, the police were on our doorstep. No one moved. My daughter still hadn't spoken. Just sat there, holding her wrist, the one with the blue bracelet her older brother had given her 3 years ago. The last Christmas before everything changed. They say Christmas is about joy. But sometimes, it's about memory. About ghosts wrapped in glittering paper. About grief pretending to be celebration. And sometimes, it's about the moment when silence says more than any scream ever could. Have you ever opened something you thought you were ready for, only to realize it was never meant to be found again? The officers didn't say much at first. One stood by the door, the other knelt by the tree like he was trying not to step on something sacred. My daughter still hadn't moved, her eyes locked on the snow outside like if she stared long enough, maybe the world would rewind. Maybe none of this would have happened. The box sat open between us. That small, unbearable thing resting in the torn wrapping paper like a buried memory clawing its way to the surface. I picked it up. A silver keychain. Worn smooth around the edges. Still had that tiny engraving, "See you at the lake, love always." Her brother had it on his backpack the summer before the accident. I hadn't seen it since the hospital cleared out his things. My breath caught. I knew what I was holding. But what I didn't know, what none of us could know, was how it ended up in that box. And why now? The room felt too full and too empty at the same time. One of the officers asked me if I recognized it. I nodded, but my voice didn't follow. I looked at my daughter instead. She was biting the inside of her cheek, like she used to do when she was younger and didn't want to cry in front of anyone. She looked so much like him when she did that. Like they shared a grief neither one of them had asked for. Her brother, Lucas, had been her whole world. We used to joke that they were twins born 4 years apart. He made her laugh when no one else could. He defended her from middle school bullies, made her lunch when I was too tired, slipped notes into her notebooks that said things like "You're enough, always." When he died, something in both of us folded inward. Grief makes people strangers, even to themselves. There were days after the funeral when she wouldn't speak at all. Just sat at the kitchen table tracing the wood grain with her finger while the kettle screamed in the background. It's strange the things you remember. The silence. The burn of tea gone cold. The way she stopped wearing her blue bracelet for a year, then quietly slipped it back on one day without saying a word. Now, she clutched that same wrist like it was all she had left to hold. One of the officers asked if anyone else had access to the house. I told them no. No one who would do this. No one who should. But even as I said it, something inside me shifted. Because deep down, I knew that keychain hadn't just appeared. Someone wanted us to see it. Someone wanted her to remember. And in that moment, all I could think was, why today? Why Christmas, of all days, to come back from the dead? Sometimes, the past doesn't stay buried. It waits for when you've almost healed. The officers left just before noon. They said they'd follow up, that we should stay reachable. Their words were flat, practiced, like they'd said the same thing at dozens of front doors, but never meant it the same way twice. After they were gone, my daughter stood up, walked to the hallway, and disappeared into her room. She didn't say a word. I sat there on the couch, still holding the keychain like it might burn a hole through my palm. The tree lights blinked behind me. The cocoa had gone cold. I could still smell the cinnamon rolls I made that morning. It all felt wrong, like a stage set after the plays ended. I heard her door close softly upstairs, then a muffled sob. The kind you let out when you think no one's listening. The kind that sounds like something breaking, but quietly. I should have gone to her. I know that. But I just sat there. Frozen. Still trying to figure out if this was some kind of prank, or punishment. And if it was a punishment, for what? Later that evening, I knocked on her door. She was curled up on the far side of the bed, her back to me. She didn't tell me to leave, which was something. So I sat at the edge, waiting. "You kept it," she said suddenly. Her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't," I answered. "I thought it was lost." She rolled over, her eyes red but clear. "Then how did it get here?" That question sat between us like a third person. I didn't know how to answer it. Still don't. But then she said something that made my heart clench in a way I wasn't ready for. "He wouldn't do this," she whispered. "He wouldn't scare me." And I saw it. The invisible mirror. She was angry. Not just at the keychain, or the mystery of it, but at me. At the way I've buried things. At the way I've smiled through holidays while she was drowning just beneath the surface. She saw it in me because she knew it in herself. And maybe, deep down, I resented her for still feeling it so loudly. For not being able to pretend better. "I don't think this is about scaring us," I finally said. "I think someone wants us to remember something." She looked at me, hollow and tired. "We never forgot." There it was. The truth. We'd carried the grief like matching weights, but handled them differently. I put mine in boxes, behind photos, under polite smiles. She wore hers like a second skin. She pulled her sleeves over her hands, hiding the bracelet again. And then she asked the question I'd been avoiding all day, "Mom, what if someone knows something we don't?" I looked out the window. Snow still falling. Streetlights flickering. One wrapped gift left under the tree, untouched. And inside me, something whispered, what if they're right? Sometimes, the scariest ghosts aren't the ones that visit, but the ones we never knew were watching. That night, the house refused to settle. The radiator clinked in the walls. The Christmas lights on the tree flickered, then dimmed entirely, leaving the room in a low, static hum of silence. Shadows stretched across the hallway like they were reaching for something they'd never quite touch. My daughter hadn't come down for dinner. The plates sat untouched on the counter, steam long gone. I hadn't eaten either. I kept walking circles around the kitchen, flicking the light switch just to feel like I was doing something. Like I had control over at least one small thing. But I didn't. I hadn't for years. I stood at the window and watched as the snow thickened. A car passed. Too slow. Headlights scanned across the living room walls and vanished again. I caught my reflection in the glass, pale, hunched, older than I remembered being just this morning. Then I heard it. Not loud, just the sound of weight shifting above me. A soft thump. Then another. I called her name. No answer. I climbed the stairs two at a time, something inside me coiling tighter with each step. Her door was cracked open. She was sitting on the floor. Knees to her chest. The keychain on the carpet in front of her. She wasn't crying. But she looked like she wanted to scream and didn't know how. Her hands trembled against her jeans, fingers curled so tightly they were pale at the knuckles. When she looked up at me, her voice broke. I thought it was over, she whispered. I know. I thought if we just moved on. If we kept pretending. He'd be okay. We'd be okay. And I knelt beside her, finally understanding something I hadn't let myself face. She wasn't just grieving him. She was grieving who we became after him. There was no room in our house for rage, or confusion, or the 1,000 tiny deaths that follow real loss. We'd been quiet. We'd been polite. We'd put things in boxes. But boxes don't hold ghosts. They just trap the living. I still hear him, she said. In my head. His laugh. The way he used to tap twice on my door at night, just to check. She looked at the keychain again, and for the first time, I noticed something else, a small rust stain along the chain. Like it had been buried. Like it had weathered time somewhere it didn't belong. I don't think someone's trying to hurt us, she said. I think someone's trying to tell us the truth. And in that moment, the floor beneath everything we believed began to shift. Because what if this wasn't a haunting? What if this was a confession? Some wounds don't close. They whisper. They knock. They find their way back on snowy nights, wrapped in ribbons and silence. We didn't sleep that night. The house stayed lit only by the flicker of leftover Christmas lights and the glow of a hallway lamp. It was 2:47 a.m. when I heard the back door creak, not loudly, but just enough to slice through the quiet like a needle. I crept downstairs. The kitchen was empty. Cold. The back door still locked. But on the table, next to the untouched dinner plates, something new sat under the dim glow. Another box. Not wrapped. Just a plain cardboard square with no markings. My stomach dropped. I didn't call my daughter. I didn't want her to see it. Not until I could breathe again. I peeled the flaps open with shaking hands. Inside was a photograph. Old, faded. Torn at the corner. It was the three of us, Amy, Lucas, and her, standing at the edge of the lake the summer before everything fell apart. I'd forgotten this photo even existed. Lucas had his arms slung around his sister's shoulders, her blue bracelet catching sunlight like a spark. I had my arm around both of them. We were laughing. But someone had drawn something on the back. In thick, black ink. 2 words, ask him. At first, I didn't understand. Then the chill hit. Because there was only one person it could mean. My brother. Lucas's uncle. The man who'd helped us through everything, who'd picked up groceries when I couldn't move, sat beside me at the hospital, read bedtime stories when my voice gave out. He was family. He was safety. Wasn't he? I stood in the doorway of my daughter's room, the photo pressed flat against my palm. She was sitting up, eyes wide before I even spoke. What is it? I handed her the photo. She stared. Her fingers traced Lucas's face, then flipped it over. When she saw the words, her hands dropped to her lap. She didn't ask what it meant. She didn't have to. I don't understand, I whispered. Yes, you do, she said quietly. You just don't want to. That's when it cracked. The memories I'd kept sealed in the basement of my brain started leaking. Little things. Off comments. Half-truths. The way Lucas flinched when certain names came up. The time he asked, so softly I almost missed it, do we have to go to Uncle Rob's this weekend? And me, always too tired, too distracted, too in denial, saying, he loves you, honey. Don't be silly. I collapsed into the chair by her bed. My hands shook like the air had gone too thin. She turned to me, her face pale, but steady. We didn't lose him the way we thought, she said. Someone took him long before he died. And with those words, the keychain in her palm took on new weight. Not a memento. Not a memory. A message. Sometimes, the person holding you up is the one holding the secret that breaks you. The next morning, the snow had stopped. The world outside was still, too still, like the sky itself had taken a breath and held it. Light filtered through the living room curtains, soft and golden, brushing the couch where the torn wrapping paper still lay. And there, beneath the tree, the keychain sat again. Only now, it wasn't in her hands. She had placed it gently on top of the unopened gift from the night before, the one we'd both ignored. I want to know, she said, her voice calm but raw. But I don't need revenge. I just need truth. We didn't call the police this time. We got in the car. His house hadn't changed in years. Same dent in the mailbox. Same ceramic angel by the porch, the one Lucas had chipped with a soccer ball when he was 9. He opened the door like he was expecting us. At first, there were pleasantries. Nervous smiles. But I didn't let it go that way. I handed him the photo. Showed him the back. He went silent. My daughter didn't speak. She just watched him, her gaze calm but burning, that look again, the one from the first moment she opened the box. You said you loved him, I said, my throat closing. If that was true, tell us what you did. He looked at the photo for a long time. His lips moved, but no sound came. Finally, he sat down. And in a voice I'll never forget, he told the truth. It wasn't a single act. It wasn't simple. It was years of subtle things. Manipulation. Control. Isolation masked as protection. Emotional harm wrapped in concern. Enough to change a child's spirit. Enough to take joy and make it something else entirely. He never raised a hand. He never left a mark. But what he did left scars so deep even Lucas couldn't name them fully. And the worst part? I hadn't seen it. Or maybe I hadn't wanted to. We left without saying goodbye. We didn't take the photo. We left it there. At home, she went to the tree. Picked up the keychain one last time. Then she walked out back and buried it under the snow, next to where Lucas used to sit and read during the summer. Not to forget him. To free him. To free us. The snow had started falling again, soft, slow, blanketing the yard in silence. But this time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. I stood by the window and watched her kneel in the snow. When she looked back at me, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Peace. Not complete. Not perfect. But beginning. The day my daughter opened that gift box, the world changed. But not because of what we found. Because of what we faced. Because she taught me how to stop pretending. Because we finally stopped calling silence healing. Sometimes the gift isn't what's in the box. It's what it forces you to finally let go. Have you ever loved someone so much, you ignored the part of you that knew something was wrong? The days that followed moved differently. Not slower, just quieter. Like the house had exhaled something it had been holding in for far too long. The tree was still up, but the lights stayed off most nights. We didn't need them to pretend anymore. I watched my daughter move through the house with a new kind of stillness. Not numb, intentional. Present in a way she hadn't been in years. She helped me take down the ornaments one by one, lingering a second longer on the ones Lucas had made, the crooked paper star, the reindeer with the missing antler. I want to keep this one, she said, holding the reindeer gently. Not because it was perfect, but because it wasn't. We didn't speak much about what happened. Some truths don't need repeating to stay real. But I noticed things. The way she'd sit out back, just watching the snow settle on the place where she buried the keychain. Sometimes she'd hum something soft, a song from when they were little, the kind only siblings remember without trying. One night, she asked if we could visit the lake this spring. I don't want to avoid it anymore, she said. I think I just want to stand there. I nodded. Grief doesn't always ask for answers. Sometimes it just asks you to show up. On New Year's Eve, we lit a candle on the windowsill, something Lucas used to do for no reason, as he'd say, just because it looked peaceful. The wind outside was sharp, but inside, there was warmth. Real warmth. The kind that comes when the truth has finally been spoken, even if it hurts. She turned to me and said quietly, I don't want to live around it anymore. I want to live through it. And I felt something shift in me, too. Not fixed. Not finished. But unlocked. The house is still the same. Same creaky stairs. Same chipped teacup I keep using even though it leaks a little. Same photos on the wall, but now I look at them differently. They're not just reminders of what was lost. They're evidence of what was once held. And maybe that's what healing really is, not forgetting, not replacing, but remembering honestly, and choosing to love anyway. One morning, I found my daughter in the backyard. The snow had melted slightly, revealing a small patch of disturbed earth. She was sitting beside it, not crying, not speaking. Just watching. The wind brushed her hair into her eyes. She didn't move it. She just sat there, as if keeping company with something sacred. I didn't interrupt. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let someone sit with their sorrow without rushing them through it. As I turned to go inside, I heard her say softly, almost to herself, he's not gone. He just changed where he lives. Some stories don't end. They echo. In bracelets worn again. In boxes opened. in silence kept, then broken. And in the quiet decision to keep walking forward even with a limp. What's something you buried but never let go of?